We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Tuesday. It's already been busy. Monday was a little crazy. We've got a lot of things to talk about. My thanks to Larry, who joined us on the show yesterday. This is going to be mostly emails today because we got a lot of emails and a number of them about the show I did yesterday with Larry. You'll want to stick with us for that. That's going to be interesting to say the least. I wanted to bring something up before we got into the emails because there's a lot of good emails. We've been noticing something, a trend, if you will, with liberalism or the left side in politics. You heard the story about Britain. They've had conservative rule for 17 years. And big surprise to a lot of folks, the Labor Party won. That was strange. Nobody expected that. Then there was a shift in Iran, believe it or not. They've had a conservative leadership for a long time, but now they've got a more liberal leadership in Iran. And then there was France. Now, everybody, all the polls said the conservatives would hold on to their seats and continue to control France. The polls said it, man. It wasn't even close. But what happened was interesting. The polls were wrong, as I've suggested so many times. They were wrong. And not only did the left side politics beat the right side, they beat them like a fucking drum. You have to wonder if this isn't a trend throughout the world. You have to wonder if Donald Trump didn't have some impact on those other countries that decided to go left. They see what's going on in this country. They see what's possible if you let the conservative politicians take the lead, and they're nervous about it. So we've got Britain, Iran, and France all shifting to the left at a time when nobody expected it. This may very well be a trend. If you think people in other countries are worried about the conservatives and Donald Trump, that's nothing compared to what we have going on in this country. In spite of what anybody says or anybody talks about, there isn't a lot of goodwill for the Republicans in this country. They've got a lot of shit hanging over their heads, which they put there themselves. Regardless of who runs in November, there isn't a Democrat that could lose to Donald Trump. That said, I'm feeling stronger today that Joe Biden will continue on and be the candidate in November. And we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. But first, I wanted to start out with the emails. First one is one that just came in a little bit ago, and I thought it's an important story. So I want to read this right away. This person saw the same report I saw, and there was a huge story earlier yesterday. New York Times comes out with a bombshell. Hey, a neurological doctor showed up at the White House to see Joe Biden 8 times while he was in office. Now that sounds pretty damning. That sounds pretty concerning, especially when all these people are suggesting that he's got neurological problems. This seems to put the nail in the coffin. That's what it does. And I got creators all over TikTok, some very well known creators saying, see, I told you. What are you going to say about that? Well, here's the problem. When you've got a media and you've got creators on this or on the app TikTok, not getting all the information or not waiting for the facts to come out, they see something that they think is salacious and they start to report it. And then they end up having egg on their face. So that leads me into this email from the crazy cat lady. You know who I'm talking about. Um, but let's get into it because I think this is important. She says, good evening, Mike. I have told you previously that I really enjoy Lawrence O'Donnell and the way he presents a story. I concur. I agree with you. I love Lawrence O'Donnell. He's one of the few in mainstream media that I like watching and that I actually trust because he seems to know what he's talking about. And he seems to have some credibility in that he wants to tell the truth as opposed to whatever is sexy at the moment. She goes on to say, tonight he has again brought to light information that I think will calm nerves. There was a report of a neurologist visiting the White House 8 times this year. And I think the press corps was asking if they were visiting the president. The response was clear and simple. The White House medical team services not just the president, bought the entire White House staff and all the military who are employed at the White House staff. Often the military service people are the ones that require a neurological visit. Also included in the report was a note from Joe Biden's physician reiterating that he had a neurological exam at the last physical appointment. He has done one every year, and that last appointment was this past February, so not that long ago. Donald Trump claims he's had a cognitive test, but that was fucking 6 years ago, so fuck him. Lawrence O'Donnell went on to read the doctor's findings and that our president is not experiencing neurological difficulties. The doctor noted the cervical arthritis and the resulting stiffening gait, and that he also has neuropathy in his feet, as well as a loss of feeling of hot versus cold in his feet from last year, and it's moved up to his ankles. Although that part of the exam was not read, I would think that thorough neurological exam would include a cognitive evaluation. After the email that I sent you yesterday, I wanted to follow up with this because it's hard to keep up with all this, and I know you'll share it with all your listeners. Thanks, Mike, for everything you do. Judy, the crazy cat lady in Portland, Oregon. Oregon. All right. Now, that's a great story because the New York Times dropped this bombshell thinking they had something. I saw creators out here, creators of notes saying, oh my God, see, I told you, it's over now. But when it's looked into deeper, it's all bullshit. It's the media and creators jumping on something they think looks like a bombshell, looks sexy, and they start to report it before they know all the fucking facts. And Judy's exactly right. Joe Biden's doctor did do a neurological checkup in February, just a few months ago, and said that Joe has no issues there. Joe does have some other medical problems like a stiff gait, and they said neuropathy. Well, guess who else has a little bit of neuropathy? Me, because I have type 2 diabetes. It can affect the way you walk. It doesn't me so much, but it does other folks. I know a lot of folks with neuropathy who are perfectly sound of mind, but have trouble walking because of that condition. So the New York Times think they're doing something, and all these creators and the rest of the media come out and they immediately jump on Joe Biden like the bottom feeders they are. But they were wrong. They were absolutely fucking wrong. I'm going to tell you what I'm thinking now. Joe Biden stepped up today, and Joe Biden's kind of pissed off right now. Joe Biden's kind of a kindly grandpa, very easygoing guy, but he's getting pissed off. And I guess we need to remind everybody he still is the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the free world, maybe the entire world. There's got to be a certain amount of respect paid for that, and you can't just pounce on him at every turn. And he's about had a fucking enough. He said, I'm not getting out of the race, and we're going to stop talking about this because it's 2 weeks about a fucking debate. I was tired, I was whatever, and I'm 81 years old. What the fuck do you want? And I agree. This is exactly how I want my president to talk. Fuck you, I'm doing it anyway. That's a strong president. That's somebody who knows what he's doing and is confident in himself. Here's what I think is going to happen, and we'll talk more about it here in a moment. All these things work in trends. We had the media and a few Democrats. Now, people want to make you think that there's a bunch of Democrats want Joe Biden to quit. There's like 7 or 8 or 9 members of the House of Representatives. That's like 4% of the Democratic caucus. This isn't a fucking mandate. Hakeem Jeffries says he supports him. Schumer in the Senate said he supports Joe Biden. Joe Biden's going to fight this. He's going to beat it down because he's the biggest guy in the room. He's the fucking president. Eventually, this will die down and people will have to back off because Joe's not falling for it. And a lot of people in Joe's audience isn't falling for it. This is what we need Joe to do. We need him to continue to be tough, continue to push back, continue to talk shit about Donald Trump and anybody else who wants to speak up against him, and keep pushing. Joe Biden will be the nominee. And I think once he gets through this thing, this whole process may give the impression that he's a stronger president than we already thought. This whole thing may work for Joe Biden in the end, even though it seems like they're vultures picking at the bones. Joe Biden's standing strong. He ain't going nowhere, and nobody can make him go anywhere unless he chooses to do it. Doesn't sound like Joe's going to do this, so we're going to ride this out. Once the story goes nowhere, like these stories are, then they'll have to go back and focus on Donald Trump. This whole thing was a strategy of the Republican Party. And the one thing we know about the Republican Party, they always fuck up. None of their strategies work. Oh, Joe Biden's taking bribes. Yeah, no evidence. Hunter Biden, this, whatever. They keep failing, and they're going to fail on this one too. And I'm going to tell you this, there are creators out on TikTok, and there are people in the media that are going to have to answer for their fuck up. That's what I told people before. If Joe Biden decided to step aside, those people calling for his removal, if the Democrats lose in November, it's on those motherfuckers. But if Joe Biden sticks it out, gets elected president again, every one of those motherfuckers have to look him in the eye. And I wouldn't be surprised if Joe Biden just ignores them. They are inconsequential because they were trying to take him down. They are not friends, so they don't deserve any extra attention from the sitting president of the United States. All right. We've got some emails, and this first email, well, the second email, comes from Alona. And a reason I'm pulling this to the top of the pile, it wouldn't normally be on the bottom of the pile based on when it came in, but I'm pulling it to the top of the pile because of the fact that her husband was on the show yesterday. Now, I enjoyed doing that show. Larry and I think in different ways. We're on opposite ends of the spectrum in some things. Um, Larry's kind of a character. And some people, based on the emails I got, were kind of mad at Larry. And I think I told him that. I said, you're going to get some heat over this. And I don't think he thought he was, but he will get some heat over it based on who the audience here is listening to the Rational Boomer podcast. But I will say this about Larry. I like Larry. He does think differently than I do, but he's a good sport. He's willing to wade into this. He gave me an opportunity I don't normally have with most guests. He gave me a chance to spar a little bit, talk some shit, and be as sarcastic as I normally am, and be able to take it out on him, and in turn, he'd take it out on me. I think some people took it too seriously. I didn't take it that seriously. This wasn't a battle. This was somebody who had a different opinion, and we wanted to talk this out, and we did. Anyway, his wife, Alona, who we all know and love, who's been on the show, she sent me an email about last night's show. This is what she said. She said, "Hi, Mike. Thanks for getting me off the hook yesterday. I got sick of listening to my husband, Larry, ranting about Biden being senile. So I asked, why don't you go on the Rational Boomer podcast and talk to Mike?" Ilona was probably thinking, see if you get away with that shit with Mike. And she goes on to say, thanks for taking one for the team, Mike. She knew exactly what was going to happen. And nothing drastic happened. I thought it was a lot of fun, to be perfectly honest with you. She goes on to say, I disagree with my husband when he says Biden is senile. Biden has always been more known for his gaffes. Perhaps they are getting worse or more frequent. Maybe also the gaffes are being tracked and broadcast more by those who will benefit from them. Couldn't agree more. Given his speech impediment and the effects of aging on the brain, Biden can't think and speak as quickly as he once could. It's a normal thing that's happening. But we don't like to see people get old in our society, and certainly not in public. We have such a huge anti-aging culture. Nobody wants to get old, but everyone wants to live forever. That is very true. Yes, Biden is old, but has wisdom, even if he doesn't always sound wise. We've had younger presidents who spoke eloquently, but also damaged our country. Joe and his team are for all of us, regardless of our political affiliation. It's good for your listeners to hear a dissenting voice because they should know many more think as he does. And a few even popped up in the comments. Your fellow TikTokers, the media, and other Democratic leaders are turning against the president. I even heard a conspiracy theory that Jill Biden is the mastermind who is secretly manipulating Joe to stay in the race for her own benefit. Misogyny lives on. Things are just getting crazier and crazier. We can't afford for the Democratic Party to split apart this close to the election. These next 4 months are going to test our mettle. Let people talk their shit. There is nothing to do but hang tight and see what happens next. Cheers to not worrying and staying in the present moment. If there is ever a time to practice getting a hold of your emotions, this is it. I'm grateful for you, Guru Mike, especially your equanimity. Your show continues to be a safe harbor during these tumultuous times. Alona. This is interesting because I talked to Alona and we're on the same page. Her husband and I, maybe not so much. And I will tell you this about Larry. He's kind of a character, and I found it kind of entertaining, his character side. And again, I thought it made it more interesting. I thought it was one of the more interesting shows because there was a lot of give and take. It was pretty fast paced. Now, Larry may have said some things that you don't like. Um, but there are a lot of people out there that don't like some of the things I say. And Larry may get some heat. In fact, as I read some of these other emails, some people didn't really cotton to Larry. And I got some good news for Alona. Based on the emails I got, you don't have to worry about some woman in the Rational Boomer podcast audience coming in and sweeping your husband away from you. I don't think that's going to happen. Nonetheless, I like Larry. Larry was fine. We love Alona, and I appreciate you giving us the opportunity to do that show. It was a different kind of show, and I had fun doing it. So thanks, Alona. Thanks, Larry. And we'll be reading some emails a little later on. Next one says, Hi, Boomer. Andy was such an interesting guest. I will say that we know a lot of young people his age, including our own children, and they don't talk like him. I have to think he's an outlier intellectually. And I hope he does pursue his aspirations of running for office. We need people like him, and he's a very good speaker, which would facilitate his success. I couldn't agree more. Andy is a Gen Zer, very bright, very common sense, and I like the kid too. And I think he's got a bright future. Now, the email goes on. It seems to me that in red states, particularly, there's a peer pressure on young man to take on a kind of folk country tough guy pickup truck kind of persona, a willful ignorance they sing about in the modern Nashville songs. Here's to there being many more like Andy who have the brain power to think past that nonsense. Best garage door, Jeff. P.S. Kamala would lose. She's somehow been diminished. I'm not sure why or how, but she's 100% loses. Michelle 100% wins in a landslide. Imagine what she would do with Trump's nonsense and impetuousness in a debate. A fellow can dream, can he? Well, first of all, I'm not so sure Kamala would lose. Kamala was mishandled by the Biden administration. Given Biden's age and the possibility of something happening to him from the beginning of this 4-year term, the Democrats and Joe Biden should have been spotlighting Kamala, put her in a position to win. Let people feel confident for her because in the race, they need to know that that one person who's a heartbeat away from the presidency is capable. And they missed an opportunity by not spotlighting her. I don't think she 100% loses. But I will tell you this, I know Michelle 100% will not run, so that's not even really an issue. But when it all comes down to it, as I've said before, I honestly believe that Joe's going to ride this out. He's going to stand tough. He's going to look stronger than ever. And ultimately, it's going to help him when we come to the election in November. That's just my gut feeling about it. I have no basis to prove that, no data that shows it. But I'm seeing how this is playing out. These people keep trying to put pressure on Joe Biden to step aside, and Joe's just not fucking buying it. Just not fucking buying it. And why should he? He's the president of the United States. He can and will tell all these people to fuck themselves. And God help them if he wins in November, because now they're going to all have to face Joe Biden, these members of Congress and the fucking media. It's a great strategy for the Republicans who started this whole mess. The media has become complicit, and the scared Democrats are running around like their hair is on fire. They all got caught. They all got fooled. I've said this before. This is all about a Republican strategy. Tried to diminish Joe Biden. They did it to Hillary Clinton. They tried to do it to Joe in 2020, and now they're trying to do it again. The media and these Democrats got sucked into it. You got fucking played. And in the end, you're going to come out looking wrong and looking silly. All right. Next one says, Hi, Mike. I have heard you discuss the student loan dilemma from time to time. After today's show and hearing your thoughts about loan forgiveness, I have to say I agree totally. However, there's another serious issue that I have never heard you discuss. Many of these student loans were part of a student aid package offered by universities. When the student accepted this aid, they agreed to the loans, and in most cases, the parents had to also sign because the student was not 21. This often results in a new graduate low earnings and unable to afford the loan payments, which are now the responsibility of the cosigner or parent. We now have parents at or near retirement age who are buried in loans, which takes their savings or home equity and leaves them unable to afford retirement and facing garnishment of their Social Security benefits. I know this all too well because we are one of these Parent Plus families. Our daughter was awarded an amazing student aid package of $70,000 a year to cover the cost of NYU. 40,000 of this was scholarship and grants, but the hidden aid package of loans was $30,000 a year. After 4 years and a teaching degree, we, not just her, have a loan for $120,000, which in just a few years has grown to over $150,000. And they want minimum monthly payments of over $2,000. I'm 75, and this is almost my monthly Social Security check. So my wife and I still have to work to just scrape by. And even with my daughter helping, we can't cover the loan. And now the government wants to put us in collections and take our Social Security and a lien on the house. We have depleted our savings and must now sell our house of 40 years to pay this loan. Maybe we were unaware of the consequences, but we also resent the fact that the government can loan money to big business for little, if any, interest, but charge students and families 8% compounding every day. Not only will the young people have no purchasing power in the new economy, but their parents will also be unable to retire. Sorry this was so long, but it's a real problem affecting our futures. Thanks for your daily dose of sanity. Gary, the oldest boomer. Now, Gary's written a number of times. And this story is important. I know of parents that are stuck with their kids' college loans because they were signed on. Um, and it does put those folks, people retired, in a horrible position. These college loans, I say, are a little predatory. We tell our kids, you must go to college. You have to go to college. You won't get a job if you don't go to college. So you do. And you can't afford it because of these egregious, ridiculous amounts for tuition. So you give them these easy loans. Sounds like good times, easy credit ripoffs. That's what these loans are about. Now, when Gary or I were back going to college, the tuition wasn't anything like it is now. It's outrageous now. And then they hang this over your head for the rest of your life. Gary's 75 years old. He's not going to get this paid off probably in his lifetime. Then what happens? This is ridiculous. Why would a government put elderly folks in this position, let alone the students in this position? This is something that has to be rectified. This is something that has to be fixed. And I will tell you this, Joe Biden didn't get it passed the first time. And some people want to blame Joe Biden, but it wasn't Joe Biden's fault. It was about a lawsuit from some Trump-la-fuck motherfucker, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court is the reason why this $10,000 relief didn't come. Now, I said when this was going on, that $10,000 thing is a nice token, but it really doesn't do anything. It doesn't take any kids or parents off the hook. It has to be more than that. And when I was talking to some people, I said, the only thing I can tell you is if you vote Democrats in the House and the Senate and in the presidency, this whole loan forgiveness will get another run through. And this time it will be substantial. It will actually have an impact. You can try to blame Joe Biden for this, but it's not his fault. He's done everything he can. And when he was turned down with his plan, which I didn't think was enough, but he believed that he would at least be able to get that through before the end of his term. I believe that after November, that will be one of the things they'll be looking at, and we'll be looking at a more significant forgiveness because we've got to do it. We can't have elderly folks like Gary, and I hope you don't mind me calling you elderly, but I guess I'm elderly too. But the point is we can't have people being crucified financially, whether they be old or young or middle aged. But the fact is, there's a lot of people that are struggling. And it's all because the predatory practices in terms of tuition from our colleges. Something has to be done to rectify that. This is absolute bullshit. And they can fuck themselves. The Republicans are the ones that are the reason people are struggling today, just like with overturning Roe v. Wade. They talk about it like, well, we are pro-life, but you don't talk about the effects of the real people in this country. Old Soul comes on here and she tells us the story, and they are absolutely horrifying. What you need to know is what Gary said. It's equally as horrifying for these people with these predatory loans, elderly people not being able to get by, not being able to relax and actually retire, and kids being taken out of the equation because they can't buy houses and they can't buy cars and they can't spend their money because they have no money. So what's that do? Even if you don't want to help these folks that are in a position to have these loans, understand this is going to be absolutely devastating on our economy. No one's going to have any money to buy anything. And when nobody buys anything, the economy takes a hit. I strongly believe this loan forgiveness thing has to happen. It has to happen in a big way, or the government's going to be spending a lot more money than they would by forgiving these loans. They're going to have to somehow help the older folks that are stuck with these loans they can't pay. And they're going to have to do something with the kids who can't spur the economy on. It's going to cost the government a lot more. You can see it as giving somebody a free ride, but it's not about the people. It's about the country as a whole. It's about the economy. And we're going to take a break here in a minute, but I want to say something about the economy. We got the Democrats, the Republicans talking about Joe stepping aside. Joe's built an incredible economy in this country. And Joe says, fuck you, no, I'm staying. So how would you imagine the stock market reacted to that? I mean, it's all speculative with the stock market. They go up and down with whatever's happening in the news. So everybody wants Joe to step aside. Joe says, fuck yourself. What did the stock market do? Well, the stock market broke yet another record up above 40, up above 40,000, I think, yesterday. Stock markets going gangbusters, in spite of the fact that Donald Trump said he had the greatest economy ever. Not even fucking close. He didn't have the greatest economy before Joe Biden took office, and now Joe Biden has buried Donald Trump's economy several times over. So apparently, the stock market feels strongly about Joe Biden and likes the fact that Joe Biden is standing up and pushing back. Gary, I'm sorry you're going through this. This is fucking absolutely bullshit. And once we get through this election and we can do something about it, you can trust I'm going to be harping on this shit like nobody's business. We're going to try to start a groundswell of people bitching about it, and we will continue to bitch and push until the Democrats do something about it. All right. We are going to take a quick break and we will be right back. We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, and we have a lot of emails to get through, so let's get to it. Next one says, Dear RB, I've been following you for about 6 months now and simply want to thank you for your excellent post. Thank you. I count on you and Heather Cox Richardson for the information that I need to determine what's what, and I really appreciate your perspective. I have commented on a few of your Facebook posts under my Facebook pseudonym, Ramon Cummings White. When I start using Facebook, I needed a pseudonym because of my line of work as a licensed private investigator. I needed the access to the witnesses and criminal defendants that I represent, but without them knowing who I am. Many of them are scary people. It's not so true anymore now that there are so many social media platforms, but my pseudonym has stuck. Just so you know, thank you again for the time and effort you put into the effort to reclaim our nation. I'm banking on you being correct about how this is going to go. Sincerely, Gene. Looks like he's from Vermont. And Gene, I appreciate it very much. You put me in good stead with Heather Cox Richardson. She's quite an intelligent woman. She's got great insight, and she's a great writer. So I appreciate you putting me in that same breath, as it were. Thank you, Gene. Next one comes from Walter from Montreal. He says it's been a long time since anyone has brought up the name Louis DeJoy. That's the famous postmaster general that could mishandle ballots in the November election. Have they installed new sorting machines and slowed down postal service since the 2020 election? Walter from Montreal. Yeah, Louis DeJoy. He's a special kind of piece of shit. And has he tried to undermine the postal service? Yeah, he has. I don't know to what extent, but I tell you what I will do, Walter. I'll look into it and try to find out. I don't know all the details of it. There's been a lot of shit going on, and I'm not on top of everything, but it is something that's important to look into, so I will. Suffice to say, Louis DeJoy didn't do us any favors, did no favors for this country, and however he decided to handle the postal service. But that's something we should definitely look at. So I will do that, Walter. Thank you. Next one comes from Terry. She said, I've said this a few times in comments on YouTube, but I guess you haven't seen it. Biden is 81 years old, not 82, and he'll be 81 until after the election, as his birthday is November 20th. Cheers, Terry. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I should say this, there are a lot of comments in TikToks, in Facebook, in Instagram, and on YouTube. There's absolutely no way. It's not that I don't want to. There's no way I can get to all the comments. There's just too many. I'd spend my whole day and then some addressing comments and getting into conversations. The best I can do is do the videos I do and let you talk to amongst yourself. If you do have a question, it's very easy to get it to me. You just email me at rationalboomer@gmail.com, or on TikTok, you can DM me, or even YouTube, you can DM me, but I don't get to them all. And I appreciate your input. When I saw this email, I went and checked it out for myself, and you're absolutely right. Joe Biden is 81 years old. He will not be 81 till, or will not be 82 until after the election in November. So Terry, thank you for that. Thank you for straightening my shit out. All right, the next one says, "Holy shit, Mike, I did it again. I started out thinking I'd just write a brief note, but it has morphed again into a mini novel. I know you don't like to read excessively long emails, but I'm hoping you'll bear with it since it's a message example of analysis I've given a lot of value to, and I'd like to have the other listeners hear it. And if until now they weren't so inclined to my view, maybe this will give them some food for additional thought." All right, I'll take a deep breath and we'll get into. I feel like a guy reading an Audible book. Starts out, "Fuck that lead into the paragraph. I realize I just lengthened my mini novel. My apologies." It's all right, quite all right. "I listen to a lot of podcasts, all of yours and many others. I do listen to mainstream media, and occasionally I'll tune to Fox to see what nonsense they're espousing. Also, I read all the major national newspapers and a couple of local papers. I've listened to many pundit discussions comparing Joe Biden to Donald Trump. You're right. It's all hype for ratings to put out the perception that it's a neck and neck horse race, and the pundits, etc., are the only ones with binoculars. So the rest of us, according to them, have to rely on them and interpret the race. But that is complete bullshit and a con job. Couldn't agree more. First things first, there is no moral equivalence between the two contenders vying to become our next president. So I say, let's all, in this land of ours, show some respect where it's due. All of us Americans should give Joe Biden the respect he deserves for the office he holds and the character that guides him by referring to him as President Biden or Mr. President, not Joe. Well, I will say this: when I call him Joe, it's not out of disrespect. It's because Joe actually seems like one of us. I think Joe would be cool with us calling him Joe. I know, according to a procedure, we should call him President Biden. And he is President Biden. When I call him Joe, it's no disrespect. We can agree to disagree on that. And unlike President Biden, his contenders should never be honored with the salutation of Mr. President, nor as President Trump. He has misused and abused the power of the presidency to such an extent that, unlike other living presidents to whom we show respect by referring to them as Mr. President in honor and respect of their service to democracy, Donald Trump does not deserve such reference we show or reverence we show our other presidents. He doesn't even deserve the dignity of being called Mr. He should simply either be called Donald Trump, Donald, or just simply Trump. Now, I would add one there. I personally like Dirty Diaper Donnie Trump. That's my personal preference. And I think that is the best description of who Donald Trump is. On another much more important issue, I would like every American to consider using the comparison of how President Biden conducts himself at rallies versus how Trump conducts himself at rallies. In the comparison, if we observe their conduct at their respective rallies very carefully, we find the only main universal reason to vote for Joe Biden. I watched President Biden at his rally the other day in Wisconsin and compared it to any of Trump's rallies he's had over the past 7 years or so. Notwithstanding the policies espoused by either of them or any of their respective rants, whether a minor or major rant, the most important observation of both men, which unequivocally demonstrates why one must be our next president and the other must never be. It's personal character. Of note, at all Trump rallies, he comes on stage clapping, which my psychology experience informs me is a simple tell of his own narcissism. He, in reality, is clapping for himself, and he repeats the same egotistical behavior at the end of his rallies. As more than a clear contrast is how President Biden conducts himself. Of particular note was his recent Wisconsin rally. If you didn't happen to catch it, you'll find it on YouTube in its entirety. Now, during his speech, if there was something that he didn't do well, he never blames anyone else, only himself, ever. And true to his character during the Wisconsin debate, he did not blame anyone for his debate performance except himself. Much more importantly, President Biden's conduct after his speech at the rally. Unlike Trump, who always walks off stage clapping narcissistically for himself, President Biden has quite a different approach, which um, speaks volumes about his character. Now, President Biden mingles with any of the crowd Secret Service lets him get to, and he's hugging people, taking selfies with a genuine smile, chatting up those close to some, and generally engaging other human beings as he's simply being a human, no better, no worse than any of his other followers at his rallies. Now, putting politics and political positions and knowledge of the geopolitical environment aside, character is all that matters. You can have two people versed in politics equally, but if it comes down to diametrically opposed qualities of character, that is the tiebreaker. And based on the criteria, when considering these two contenders, voting for the President Biden is the only rational conclusion any rational person can make. I know this email is longer than typical, but when I saw that Wisconsin debate, well, Wisconsin rally, I think you're talking about, it just stuck in my mind and actually in my heart as well. That in watching how President Biden was conducting himself with regular folks, that I was really watching the candidates attribute what matters most to the character. Sorry for the long-winded email. Sometime, if and when your schedule allows, I'd enjoy talking with you as a guest on your show. I'll shoot you of a separate email to that effect. Jack T, 73 of New Hampshire. P.S. Just because I use character as my critical element in picking a president, I still recognize how disgusting, thievery, stupid, uninformed, egotistical, uneducated, selfish, rude, crude, etc., 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 that Trump is. Jack T. Thank you, Jack. I think you make some excellent points. And if this were a race just about character, and basically at this point in time, it almost really is, there is no competition. Donald Trump has no character, and Joe Biden has a boatload of it. All right. Next one says, Dear Rational Boomer, I am an avid listener, admirer, and have to agree that MSM has become, mainstream media, has become an enemy of our cause. I heard you discussing a future debate between Trump and Biden. You said that they should each be given 10 minutes to speak. There is a scheduled future debate with ABC News and two of their anchors moderating. I would like to see any future debates moderated by Kyle Clark, a Colorado anchor. He's the impressive no-nonsense moderator that initiated Bobert. Thanks for all you do, and I look forward to every TikTok and podcast. In closing, Old Soul is a true treasure and a guiding light. Couldn't agree with you more on that. And yeah, the next debate is supposed to be in September on ABC. I don't know who the moderators are going to be, but they better do a better fucking job than the two on CNN did. They were absolute failures in that. And I don't know that it was their fault. It may be CNN who told them how they had to do it and they had no choice. But I got to tell you, if it were me and you told me do not fact check Donald Trump, I wouldn't have done the fucking debate. If you're going to bridle me and stop me from doing what I should do as an alleged journalist, I'm not doing it because I'm just going to look bad. They should have known better, and I hold them responsible because they could have been better. They should have been better. All right, next up. Hi, Boomer. Erwin from Belgium here. In my last email, I said the immunity SCOTUS ruling wasn't that bad. Now, after having heard from various lawyers and experts, I retract my statement. The ruling is bad. It's really, really, really bad. And it's not even the immunity that sucks. It's the fact that the prosecutors can't use evidence of official acts to prove that a criminal act has been committed. So Jack Smith has his work cut out for him. In the meantime, the American public can only do one thing to keep that orange fascist criminal out of the White House, and that is to vote blue. Yeah, when it comes down to it, that's about all we can do at this point. I'm Belgian, so I can't vote, even though the question of who is the United States president has a direct impact on our democracies here. But what I can do is post on social media and try to convince on the fence voters to vote blue. Heck, I can even heckle Trumplafucks. That's always fun. Even if I could convince one not to vote for Trump, that would be a win. All the best, Irwin. Irwin makes a good point, and a point that I've talked about a lot. And that is everybody looks at the whole picture and says, oh, it's insurmountable. It's overwhelming. I can't do anything because I can't do it all. Nobody can do it all. I can't do it all, but we can do what we can do. And if enough people do what they can do, we can get some movement. We can get some action out of this. Don't worry about all the problems. Just worry about what you can do. What I can do is do TikToks and the podcast and hope people come and listen, maybe learn something, and then pass it on to somebody else. I'd love to be able to do more, but this is all I can do. And frankly, without you people listening to the podcast, I'm just pissing in the wind. So it's important that you're involved and participating like we're doing here with the emails and when we have the guest on. It's important we create this conversation and get people talking about it and thinking about it because we cannot trust the media to tell us the truth or tell us all the facts. Thank you very much, Erwin. All right. The next says, Morning Boomer, Mike. It is Ken from sunny Rio Rancho, New Mexico, next to Albuquerque. Only 102 today, maybe a dry heat, but still hot. Want to share a couple of things. First, I want to share a couple of quotes with you. See who this sounds like. The bigger the lie, the more people will believe it. There was no point in seeking to convert the intellectuals. Intellectuals would never be converted and would always yield to the stronger, and this will always be the man in the street. Arguments must therefore be crude, clear, and forcible, and appeal to the emotions and instincts, not the intellect. Truth was unimportant and entirely subordinate to tactics and psychology. A lie told once remains a lie, but a lie told 1,000 times becomes the truth. Just like the potato beetle destroys potatoes, the Jew immigrants destroy nations and peoples. There is only one solution to deal radically with that danger. Make the lie big, make it simple, keep saying it, and eventually they will believe it. The mission of women is to be beautiful and to bring children into the world. Some people might say that's Donald Trump, and that's ridiculous. Donald Trump doesn't have that kind of fucking vocabulary. Quotes actually come from Joseph Goebbels. Any of these sound familiar? The Jew quote hurts to the core. I'm Jewish, but a great example. To make an impact on Trump's campaign, documents found that Trump went to Jeffrey Epstein's place for a massage to be put in Democratic ads. Make them prominent and emphasize he is a pedophile. See if he tries to sue anyone with this fact. Trumplafucks will scream fake news, but the normal human being should be horrified. Okay, my rant. Ken, I was going to give his last name. I'm not going to give your last name, but you make some valid points here. There is a lot of comparisons to the Nazi Party when we talk about Republicans. Donald Trump is little more than a useful idiot. Some people think he's this evil mastermind. He is not. He's an absolute idiot. He's ignorant. He is a useful idiot. What we have to understand is that what's going on with Donald Trump isn't all Donald Trump's doing. Donald Trump comes into the presidency, he doesn't have a clue what he's doing. He has no idea how the game is run in Washington, D.C. So these other people like Mitch McConnell, Kevin McCarthy, some of these other senators, some of these members of the House, some of these organizations like the Federalist Society or some of these big corporate entities, they see what they've got in Donald Trump. They see he's easily manipulated. They feed their agendas to him. And because it means money and votes to Donald Trump, he doesn't care what the fuck he says. As proof of that, Project 2025. This is an absolute fascist manifesto. It would make anybody, even Republicans, turn blue listening to this shit. But Donald Trump was on board because he thought it meant power to him, money and votes. Now it's starting to cause a backlash because people are finally understanding, finally learning what Project 2025 is. And now he says he's not connected to it. That's who Donald Trump is. That's who he's always been. And they put out a platform yesterday and they've kind of softened their tones on abortion and the LGBTQ. Let me ask you, do you trust the Republicans? They say one thing, they do another. They're going to tell you what you want to hear so they get your votes and hopefully stay in power. And then once they get in power, they'll renege on all the promises they made that got them votes. And then they will shove it down your throat. How do I know this? Because they did it already when Donald Trump was in office, overturning Roe v. Wade, this fucking Supreme Court decision. They do it in spite of what they say. Remember all the Supreme Court justices that no, we won't touch settled law like Roe v. Wade. First thing they do, they get into the position that they get appointed to for a lifetime, and they do the exact opposite as to what they promised. So if anybody has the ignorance of trusting anything a Republican said, you're going to be sorely disappointed. And if you trust them, you're not on our team, so go someplace else. All right, the next one says, Dear Mike, I discovered you on Spotify a few months ago. I'm a 61-year-old factory rat, politics head. You're doing a great service for Democrats. There definitely is no encouragement on our news outlets. I think you're right. Fear mongering, doom, despair, and agony. And keep watching the slow motion train crash. Trump is an embarrassment we'll never live down. When have we ever had a president that didn't fade into the background after their service? He scares the fuck out of the rest of the world. The Trumplafucks are hanging on to the very end, and the end is imminent. Thanks, Boomer, for letting me vent. Beth. Again, I couldn't agree with you more. You're absolutely correct. That's exactly what's happening. Next one says Adam Schiff and some wimpy bitches in Congress that remain unnamed are calling for Biden to drop out and let Kamala Harris take over. I don't want that to happen. How can your listeners make their voices heard? Joe Biden is going to be the man to take us to victory if he gets his groove back. I think he's already getting his groove back. When he stood up yesterday and said, fuck yourself, I'm still in the race. That's the first step in showing strength against the media, against the Democrats, and certainly against the Republicans. The email goes on to say, if we don't flip everything to Democrat, we are going to be so screwed. We need to bring in 2 new justices and get our democracy straightened out. Many European countries are keeping a liberal government or flipping liberal. Hell, even Iran and Mexico have flipped to be more liberal. This gives me hope. I still think we need to kick ass and take names. And like I said before, when you see Iran, England, and France flip liberal, I'm saying Donald Trump had something to do with it because we see these countries looking at what's happening in America, allegedly the strongest country in America. They see what's happening here and they do not want it there. Just like the voters in this country, just like the Democrats, they are terrified of what might be. And that's why there's going to be an amazing turnout in the election this November. And that's why what happened in France, Iran, and Britain happened. And nobody expected it. You talk about polls, the polls said the opposite would happen. And guess what? Those motherfucking polls were wrong. She ends the email saying, I work a lot, so I can't really volunteer very much, but I'm willing to write letters. I just don't know who to write to. I also want to remount the news outlets for giving MAGA oxygen and allowing shit to get to this. Sharon. Yeah, I understand. It's tough to donate your time or money if you don't have a lot of money. Letters are nice. But one of the things you can do, Sharon, is just come on here. This platform keeps getting bigger and bigger every day. Write your letters to me. Let me read your letters and we'll get it out to people. You had some important information and we'd be happy to put it out again and again. We're going to drive this shit all the way through November and then we're going to drive it down the fucking Republicans' throat. Trust me on this. That is what's going to happen. So, Sharon, you can write to politicians. I don't even know if they read it. But if you write me here, I guarantee you I will read it, and I will read it to everybody who's listening to this podcast. Mhm. All right. The next one says, "Hi, Boomer. A Kiwi view now. Supreme Court has created House of Biden as new royal house king. Joseph should invite 6 members of the Supreme Court to meet him and Prince Hunter and demonstrate the efficiency of bump stocks to them. Maybe Judge Cannon could be asked to join in too. King J could pardon Hunter afterwards, and as a Christian, he could posthumously pardon the 7 judges, as well as before replacing them with uncorrupt justices who could reverse immunity decisions. So Royal House could abdicate and USA could start all over again. Stu P's DJT is not just stupid. Uh, there's when I get these letters, there's sometimes misspellings or letters omitted. So I'm doing the best I can here. I think this means stupid. DJT is not just an embarrassment to the USA. He's embarrassing humanity. Yeah, he is an embarrassment, not only to his family, not only to his parents, not only to his siblings, but to all of us in this country. He's an absolute embarrassment. And he knows it. He's always been an embarrassment to anybody he's been in touch with, anybody that's connected to him. He's an absolute embarrassment. He tells himself otherwise, but the fact is, he is an absolute embarrassment. Boomer, I see that you're talking more about Project 2025 these days. I'm glad, but you still don't quite get it. You always say that for the project to happen, Donald Trump has to become the president and the Republicans have to win the House and the Senate too. I don't agree. Any conservative can become president in the next 40 or 50 years, and it can begin real fast, and your 40 or 50-year-old granddaughter can have her life ruined in short order. Billionaires are behind this, and they haven't given up, and they have made a lot of progress to date. They play the long game. In every term since 1970, the Supreme Court majority, consisting of at least 5 of the justices, has been appointed by Republican presidents. Today it is 6-3. Every Chief Justice since 1953 has also been appointed by Republican presidents. In 1972, a future Supreme Court member, Lewis Paul Jr., and now dead, sent a letter to the Chamber of Commerce and other very rich people urging them to raise money and get it organized to win greater power for the far right. In 1980, they elected Ronald Reagan, and he lowered taxes for the rich and began to move to maintain wages for the working class at low levels and to keep them low. In the 1990s, the Glass-Steagall laws were ended, thus allowing banks to be both investment banks and community banks. This hurt the working class and helped to cause the stock market crashes of 2008 and 2020. In 2000, the Supreme Court gave the presidency to the Republicans, which ended the biggest stock market crash since the Great Depression. In 2010, the Supreme Court made the Citizens United decision, which allowed for the ultra rich and very large and small corporations to legally bribe political leaders and have a louder voice than the rest of us. Now, anytime a ruthless conservative becomes president, he or she can order the attorney general to arrest any and all Democratic senators and House members who try and stop 2025 into becoming law, and there is nothing anyone can do about it. Thanks to the recent Supreme Court's Trump immunity decision, I'm not saying that we must clutch our pearls and sit in a corner and cry. I am once again saying that from this time to time, encourage people to become familiar with all of this information so that we, lovers of democracy and freedom, can have a fighting chance to keep it going. Now, if you choose, you can once again beat up on me. I can take it. Still a fan, Max. I'm not going to beat up on you, Max, but you've got to consider something else. This constant fear of 2025 coming in at any given time is a little irrational in my mind, and here's why. You're right about all the things that have happened since 1970 or so. The Republicans have done everything they can to damage this country. And of course, the Supreme Court has been very helpful. But we're in much different times now. It is a scary time. I agree with you there. But here's the deal. When what happens in November, if it happens the way I suggest, this is going to be a lot different than we've seen over the past 60 years or so. Because when all of this was going on, it was going on under the cover of darkness. It was being slipped in here and slipped in there, and slowly we were like the frogs in the boiling water. That's not the case anymore. We all know what is up. This Project 2025 is a scary thing. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like to shove it down people's throats, because scaring Democrats is exactly what the Republicans want to do. You can see it now with them trying to suggest that Joe Biden's not capable of running for president. This is all fear mongering. The media picks up on it. They stir that shit. And then, of course, the Democrats, some of them buy into that. Now, I know what you're thinking. We got to tell everybody about Project 2025 because it's so egregious, then people will be scared and vote Democrat. And that's well and good. I prefer not to scare people, to get them to do the right thing. Instead, I think it's better to educate them. We're at a different time with Project 2025 than we were a couple of months ago. We're finding out that more and more people, the media is finally talking about Project 2025. Now, Project 2025 is working against the Republicans, and they're breaking their necks trying to walk away from it, even though this is the actual architecture of what they want to do should they gain power. Now, let's say what happens is exactly what I've been thinking, that the Republicans are going to get decimated in November. So what does that mean? Whatever they've been doing up to this point, they are going to have to abandon if they want to continue and survive as a party. 2025, Project 2025, the MAGA fucks, they're going to go by the wayside, or they are going to destroy themselves if they haven't already. So I'm saying once we get past November, Project 2025 is going to take a back seat because they've already found out that works against them. They're going to have to choose not to use Project 2025 or the whole ideology about this dictatorship, this authoritarianism. They're going to have to change or they're going to disappear. The idea that 40 years from now there could be another conservative group that tries to bring this back up, sure, that's conceivable. But after they take the drubbing they're going to take in November, is that likely? Are they likely going to bring it back? If you've done anything in your life, or you had a strategy for something you've done, once you've got your ass kicked, do you going to bring that back and try it again? Now, I understand Republicans are stupid motherfuckers. But if their party has come to almost the point of extinction because of these ideologies, do you really think they're going to go back that way? Fact is, I think the Republicans are going to have to make some dramatic changes in who they are and what they are. They're going to have to. I don't know what that will be, but whatever they've done from this point to November that has been an utter failure, they'd be absolutely stupid to try to do it again. They may try, but they won't succeed. All right, next one comes from John. I am also a boomer born in 1950. I'm a retired U.S. government teacher who reads and travels. Our generation screwed the pooch. I have tried many times to get a Trumplefuck to have a real conversation, a conversation where we go into some depth into a topic. They can't do it. They jump from topic to topic without settling on one thing. They are mentally incapable of focusing on any one thing. They are mentally incapable of focusing like a 12-year-old with ADHD. John, absolutely. You cannot argue with these dumb motherfuckers. All right, next one comes from Craig. Hey, Boomer, I'm writing because I was watching a video Hawk did on TikTok where he was discussing the conservatives losing their power in Great Britain and France, saying that there was a peaceful transition of power, so they now do democracy better than us. Anyway, the point of this video was talking about trends, and seeing this over in Europe makes him think that trend will continue here. Your take on these matters keeps me calm, so as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. best, Craig. Yeah, I've talked about this before, and I agree with him. We're seeing things happening in France and Britain and Iran and Mexico that we didn't expect happen. Why are we being surprised by this? Clearly, there's some fears out there about the conservative element in this world, not only this country. And as I've said before, what's going on here and going on with Donald Trump is hitting home with these people in other countries. They're scared about what's happening here, and they want to do anything they can to avoid it happening in their country. It is a trend, and I think it's indicative of what we're going to see in November. Next one says, Hi, Mike. Jay from California here. I'm back in California after flying home from Denmark and then spending a week in the woods at the youth camp. Now that my schedule is more open and I have time to spare, I'd like to find a time to get on the show and share my thoughts because I've got a lot. I've got thoughts to share on Israel Hamas because I was at the school with two Israelis and Palestinians. I think I've got thoughts to share on CNN's debate failure and just what I think of the idiots on both the right and left. That could be an interesting conversation. Well, you're more than welcome to come on, as I've told you before. All you have to do is email me. We set up a time. Last time you emailed me, you set up a time. It would have been like 6 in the morning for me or something, and that's just not feasible to record it. If we can come to some terms where we can come to reasonable times for both of us, I'll be happy to have you on. Absolutely. Next one says, Hi, Mike. I have an important message for all Republicans out there. We know who this is. Now that I have a huge growing fan base within your show, that's two persons altogether. My inner circle and my dead dog are imploring me to go and debate you live on the podcast. That would be a huge loss of time, fake news, a hoax, and a witch hunt. True Republicans know that the debate would not be fair and rigged from the start. Obviously, Mike will be all jacked up on water and even soft drinks, that motherfucker. He would use facts instead of lies. He will use the truth instead of gaslighting the listeners. And he will promote real issues that the country is facing instead of weaponizing the Department of Justice. That's just all bullshit. Republicans want nothing with that. We need to stay focused on lies, commit to felony, keep on grifting. The stupids and would be friends with the worst leaders on the planet. That's how we will lose the next election. Go MAGA, Panzer. Thanks, Panzer. Next one says, Hey, Boomer, hope you and your family had a great 4th. It's your show and you're going to do what you want, but this guy, Larry, is all over the place. Larry from yesterday. He says, I'll never vote for Trump, but a non vote is a vote for Trump. He watched, according to himself, small samples of the debate, but said Trump had a knockout blow. I disagree with him there, and you're absolutely right. He did not. Like watching the first round of a boxing match and declaring a winner. Dave's not a fan. Dave in Dallas. Sorry, Larry, he didn't like you. As I told you, there's some other emails. This one is particularly unpleasant. Boomer, what the fuck? Larry, question mark, question mark, question mark. Really? All I have to say is, Larry, you're fucking selfish. Does he even know where we are right now? I'm a proud Democrat, and I'll be happy to vote for Uncle Joe, stutter and all. And we're going to watch him win because there's no one else that can do it and do what he's done. I don't give a fuck if he brain farts. Joe Biden and Democrats have won everything since 2020, the 2020 election, the midterms, the 2023. Dems are kicking ass around the country. Remember the red wave that didn't happen? Remember there was going to be a recession if Uncle Joe was elected? Did it happen? No. Remember the stock market was going to crash under Uncle Joe? Did it? No. Fuck no. Our portfolios look better now than ever. The Biden campaign has raised over 30 million since the debate last month. Look, Boomer, I'm a self-employed individual and watched shit stain almost ruin our country, and thank the universe Uncle Joe came in and fixed not only us, but spent the first 2 years of his presidency flying around the world apologizing to world leaders because shit stain wanted to leave a shit stain on the entire world. What the fuck? I had to shut my business down for 9 weeks when Shitstain was in because, in my opinion, he caused the pandemic. I could rant and rave for hours, Boomer, but won't because people like Larry can't see past his own fat mouth. He sounds self absorbed. He ruined my Monday listening session with you when he said he's not voting because it's Uncle Joe or Shitstain, but gave Shitstain more credit than Uncle Joe. What the fuck? Uncle Joe's been getting a raw deal from the mainstream media since the debate, if that's what a debate is supposed to look like. Joe Biden has been a lifelong public servant protecting democracy, minority rights, LGBTQ rights, women's rights, and now he's sacrificing the rest of his days to protect me. That's how much he cares. That's fucking badass. We all showed up in solidarity at the primaries. As far as I'm concerned, there's nothing Joe Biden can't handle. He's taking hits from every direction and still standing. Larry should go splash some water on his face so he can be woke. Uncle Joe's not going anywhere because he refuses to be pushed out. I'm riding with Biden, and if anyone cares about democracy, they will too. To me, it seems Larry doesn't. His wife must be a saint because my husband of 34 years knows he wouldn't survive the verbal assault from me if I heard any wishy washy words about Uncle Joe coming out of his mouth, especially his age. Just so you know, Boomer, I found you on TikTok shortly after the 2020 election. I was freaking out after January 6th, and my daughter was like, "You need to scroll TikTok because there's like minded people on there, Mama." Can't tell you how happy I was to find you. I'm a 1966 Gen Xer raised by Italian immigrants who came to this country because they lived under the reign of Benito Mussolini and saw how far that got them. I heard it my whole life growing up, how hard it was for both my grandmothers, and my heart ached as a child. I feel similar ache when Shitstain's name is mentioned. I wish on a daily for Shitstain's death. I know a lot of people do, but won't say it because of karma. I welcome karma. Karma knows my feelings, and if Shitstain drops dead, preferably an awful death, it would be truly satisfying for me. Hey, Boomer, you're awesome. I tell everyone about you. Like I have said, I have my own business in a garage where a lot of shit flies and I give it right back. Thanks for being like minded. My husband wants to record me listening to you read this. Stick with Biden. Koike from Philly. You can, it's not surprising she's from Philly. That sounds like a Philly person. But you know what, Koike? I'm behind you. I'm behind you all the way. I agree with everything you said. All right, I think we've got one more email. Hey, Boomer Mike, I just wanted to say hello. I hear you say all the time to send you an email, so I thought I finally would. I'm a fairly new listener and enjoy listening on my daily walks with my dogs. I'm an older millennial and I'm from the state of Illinois, so a rather blue state for sure. Although I do live around a lot of Trump supporters, being in the rural area I live in. I just want to say I agree that we need to stop saying Joe should step down as our candidate. I think it would be a huge mistake and will cost us the election. There are just too many things at play to do this now. I keep trying to say we're not voting for Joe, we are voting for a Supreme Court. I can't seem to understand why the Democrats cannot get on board. I just support our candidate. I feel like that's something the Republicans have done by supporting Donald Trump. It's as if Trump, does no wrong, yet they all stand with him. Why can't we do the same? Joe has a bad night and everybody wants to abandon ship. I don't get it. I enjoy your rational boomer thinking and appreciate what you do. Thanks for taking the time to read my email. Let's do one more here. What's up, Mike? Hope you and your family are well and enjoying the summer. I just quickly wanted to get your thoughts on the massive victory for the left in the UK and France. Do you think this is going to continue momentum in the US? Yes, I do. I think it's an omen. Something tells me that I know the answer, but I still wanted to bring up the conversation on your podcast. Again, I hope that you are well, and I look forward to talking to you again on the podcast soon. I would love to get back on and discuss and just spend some time with you, my friend, Dennis. Well, thank you, Dennis. And is the case, that's Dennis, 21 grams. You remember him? He was the young man that does the leather work. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. But Dennis, you're welcome on anytime. You're a bright young man, and you bring an interesting perspective to the show. So we'd be happy to have you on again. It's getting a little busier though. A lot more people want to be on the show, and I love that fact. I'm excited by that fact that more people want to be on the show because I think they help to make the show a lot better. Um, and we're going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. This was all emails. And frankly, I'm cool with it. I think emails are some of the most important things we get here on the show. It allows people to offer their perspectives and insights. To Larry, you're welcome back on the show again. I had a good time. It was kind of fun. A lot of people don't like you. And I will tell you this, don't feel too bad about that because there's a lot of motherfuckers who don't like me. You got off pretty easy. I get barraged with some horrible shit every fucking day, not with the podcast, but with the TikToks and Facebook. Yeah, I get hit very hard. And all you can do is let them slide off your back and keep going. Say what you believe. Now, Larry, what you believe is a bunch of bullshit, but that's on you. You can believe what you want to believe. But thanks for Larry coming on. I had a good time with the show. All right. We are going to wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for taking time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again tomorrow.